Good Thursday, everyone. This one might get a bit... Okay, if you're not familiar with my stuff, this might get a bit... If you got a sensitive disposition towards angry attitudes and stuff and rants, I suggest you turn off now. This subject, I can't help it. It hit me really hard earlier when I found out this many details. This is a clip from the 6 o'clock news and on Sky. This is to do with the Casey report, to do with the police.
One police officer and a former officer have each been sentenced to 12 weeks in jail for sending,
which in of itself is disgusting,
grossly offensive messages in a WhatsApp group which included the killer of Sarah Everard. But they have now been bailed pending an appeal. Sky's Ashan Huranag is at Westminster Magistrate.
Why would they even get a point? How can they appeal? On what basis can they appeal?
It's court this evening, and there she is. And Ashna, just remind us of the background to this case.
Well, when describing the messages that both of these men had shared within this WhatsApp group, and these messages were deemed to be grossly offensive by the district judge in sentencing here today, Mark. It's perhaps no surprise that when both of those officers exited the court behind me, they dodged my questions, but also reporters' ones.
So they're appealing, but they're dodging all questions. Fucking cowards.
Too. When referring to both of these officers, PC, Jonathan...
Just to warn you, in advance, I'm going to play all of this clip, and it gets worse and worse as it goes on. Unfortunately, it gets so much worse.
Cobham and former Metropolitan Police Officer Joel Borders, who had both been found guilty in September, the judge said that she had never seen such explicitly offensive messages in her life. She said they showed the full range of prejudicial views, from racism to misogyny to ableism and homophobia. Also within the...
All of the major stereotype prejudices. It's just... Yeah.
This group was the killer of Sarah Everard, Wayne Couzens.
Really?
And it was only through searching Wayne Couzens' phone that this group was discovered. The pair of officers in this case had described this humour as being dark humour, that it was meant to be banter.
Right. Just to start, right? I grew up around a lot of banter. Being British, I grew up around a lot of this banter. You know, taking the piss, having a giggle at the expense of others, but there has to be a line that's drawn, surely.
But when much of these messages were read out during this trial, we heard references referring to tasering people with learning difficulties and derogatory language when referring to women, such as in one message, one of the officers, PC Borders, said when describing a female colleague, she will use me as an example, leave me on, then get me locked up when I rape and beat her. Mr. Cobham, when referring to...
I'm sorry, what? Fuck now? It's not a case of being woke or oversensitive. I'm not woke, but I can be a bit oversensitive. It's not even a case of that. It's a case of what the actual fuck? Just, it's the kind of thing you'd expect to hear out of like Ian Brady or fucking, I know, Robert Black. You know? I just, oh.
The abuse experienced by domestic abuse survivors. He said they love it. That's why they are repeat victims more often than not. For police officers, the district judge said,
These are police officers. How are these people in the force? In the service? In this country, the police force is actually supposed to be a police service. The constabulary service. They look after us. That is the service they provide. They're not a force. They're not supposed to be used like some personal army. It's just, and look. Evidently, this was in before Boris Johnson came in. You know what? I'm going to leave that for a minute.
to propagate such stereotypes, she said, in her opinion, was frankly sickening. Both of these officers have been sentenced to 12 weeks imprisonment, but they have been granted bail because they do intend to appeal those sentences.
Okay, Ashna, thank you very much. Well, that comes after it emerged that hundreds, if not thousands, of police officers who should have failed vetting checks may be serving.
This I am actually going to, at least in part and large part, blame Boris Johnson and the Conservative government. I'm actually going to blame them for this.
In England and Wales. That was the damning verdict of a report by the police watchdog, which warned that applicants with extensive criminality in their families, people with criminal behaviour on their records, and those with a history of alleged misconduct were all found to have been hired by the police. And a warning that Becky Cottrell's report contains descriptions of incidents that some may find distressing.
What you're about to hear is police officers discussing a woman who's...
Look, I value the police service in this country, but it's not what it should be. Look, the government is not doing what it should be doing. Our police service isn't doing what it should be doing. Our NHS isn't able to do what it should be doing.
It's just been strip searched.
Socialist values, British socialist values with a British tinge to it, have been utterly demolished by Thatcher and this Conservative government. Don't get me wrong, Blair could have helped more, but he could have done a lot more to be more Thatcherite and Tory and demolish it. So I won't take argument on that front. But the Tories could have built on what Labour had done. They just refused to, because the NHS. It's a socialist principle, a liberal socialist principle. Same as the welfare system, the welfare state, and we're going to end up with private police forces at this rate. Yeah, this section is just disgusting. A lot of hair, really. He said, "What did you?" They strip searched one, and what did you find in it? A lot of hair. Men and women just being completely disrespectful and then you find out the context to it, and it's even worse.
Back in 2013, Koshka Duff says she tried to help a teenage boy during a stop and search by police. But when her
Teenage boy. She tried to help a teenage boy when they was in a stop search situation.
intervention landed her in a cell, she says female officers assaulted her.
They were, grabbing at my breast. They stuck their hands between my legs. They said, they ripped the piercing out of my ear, and then they said, "Oh, let's see if she's got any more." And they stuck their hand between my legs.
Last year, Koshka received compensation and an apology from the Metropolitan Police.
Let's see if she's got any more. And the first place they went to is between her legs. No, yes, I know you can get fanny piercings. But the first place they went, they just... Why are these people in the police service? And I will elaborate on that point in just a little bit.
For the sexist and derogatory language.
Because I'm pretty sure Sky News, and usually they're pretty good, but I'm pretty sure they refuse to even mention it.
Of the officers. But
and I'm pretty sure there's a wholesale avoidance of the real origin, or part of the origin of this crisis.
New report has found that misogyny and predatory behaviour are prevalent across forces. The review team also looked at hundreds of files on the vetting of officers.
There were a significant number where we thought that somebody just shouldn't have been employed, or if they were going to be employed, they...
I would like to know what significant means, but given that this is an HM inspector, like, I don't see why this guy would lie. So...
should have been a pattern of supervision of them greater than normal that just wasn't happening. I think we're safe to say that over the last couple of years, the police have employed hundreds of people.
Right. I want you, whoever's watching this, I would like you to focus in on those words he just said. In the last couple of years. Who's been in charge in the last couple of years? Again, I will expand on this in a moment.
That we think they shouldn't have done.
The potential scale of the problem raises serious concerns about public safety after Sarah Everard's murder. Her killer, Wayne Couzens, a serving member of the Metropolitan Police, had been part of a...
Again, she uses the word serve. Serving. They serve. They are a service, not a force. The police service don't even know what they are anymore.
A WhatsApp group with other officers who sent messages described as repulsive and misogynistic.
It has to be not just a type, but a wave of change. It has to be people feeling that they can come forward, report things.
Simon Harding, former direct
when that
detective
is
chief
proved,
inspector of
proved to have done
Metropolitan Police.
that wrongdoing, they need to be gone as quickly as possible.
Fucking right.
And that process is too slow.
It really is.
The Met says they welcome the report and will consider opportunities for learning and improvement.
They say that every fucking time.
Adding, being ruthless in ridding the Met of those who corrupt our integrity is central to Commissioner Mark Rowley's vision of reform. We are setting clear expectations of behaviour and are developing data and technology to identify those who are not fit to serve. We will succeed with the vast majority of our honest and dedicated officers and staff.
Right.
Change is needed now. As the review's leader put it, officers shouldn't just represent society, they need to represent the best of it. It seems like we're a long way off that.
Fucking right.
Becky Cottrell, Sky News.
Well, following the publication of the report, senior policing figures were questioned by MPs and acknowledged that the findings were awful for the police service.
Some of the things that were in the report around senior officers pursuing women officers for sex.
It's been seen in the Navy, in the report for the Royal Navy as well. Same behaviour.
Viewing pornography at work.
Oh, what does that remind me of? Oh, yeah! Neil Parish! A dickhead from up the road from me! Yeah, that dickhead. He tractor porn.
Insulting comments about women and their appearance, and this issue of the booty patrols.
Booty patrols?
Where police officers were
Am I just really naive and have never heard of this before?
stopping pretty women.
What? I've heard of a lot of stuff that, people have told me that the police have done. I've never heard of this. They're stopping women on these booty calls that they deem pretty enough. What?
You weren't shocked by that then? You kind of knew this was all going on?
I find them, I didn't know that was all going on, obviously, but I find those shocking and disgusting, quite frankly, that behaviour. Look, as has already been said, people need the police to keep them safe and make them feel safe.
We don't, you're not, and we don't. Because you don't even know what you are anymore.
People call the police.
And at the population, actually, isn't it, for women?
Precisely. People call the police at times when they've got issues, they're at the worst, they're scared, they're frightened, and they've got to be able to trust that the police officers that are turning up there to do the job that they're there to do and to do it properly. And
Evidently they're fucking not.
This, in various examples, and you've given some there, and there are more in that report, which is an awful report from the perspective of the service. Those examples there, but we have to deal with those, and we are dealing with those.
Well, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, also gave her reaction, releasing the following statement. It is no secret that recent high-profile incidents have shattered the public's trust in policing, and His Majesty's Inspectorate report shines a stark light on some police vetting practices which make it too easy for the wrong people to enter and remain in policing.
Fuck off.
At its best, policing in this country is an example to the world, and we need to make sure this standard is consistently met across all forces. Now, Rishi Sunak has acknowledged that there is a serious and escalating problem in the asylum system.
Okay, we're not going to go into that. Right. Forwarding that, you heard some of that, yeah? And they were saying that some were fucking pimp. One of them was a pimp. What? Right. What I'm going to do now is have a quick butchers for this report. So what was it? The Casey report? Baroness Casey report? Baroness Casey review report. Review. Okay, so you got Baroness Casey's letter to the Commissioner, the report on misconduct. I'm going to go for the report on misconduct. PDF, really? Okay, fuck it. Right. Analytical report. This report sets out... I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to tell you after this what I was going to say earlier. This report sets out the evidence to support Baroness Casey of Blackstock's conclusions about the current misconduct system in the Metropolitan Police Service, the Met, as set out in her letter of 17th of October 2020 to the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. Methodology. The methods used by the review can be summarised as follows. Misconduct data extracted from the Met Centurion systems. This data contains all information on allegations, 18,500 of them, cases more than half of them, so that's 10,252, and officers and staff 12,856 involved in misconduct, formally misconduct issues from April 2013 till March 22nd. Note that this is ever since the Tories have come into power. In fact, a year after. A couple of years after. Anyway, the difference in these numbers is due to the fact that one case may involve several allegations against several individuals, and as several officers may also be involved in more than one conduct case in the same time period, the number of individual officers and staff in the data is actually 8,917. These allegations are only internal, i.e. initiated by Met staff officers or their families, not complaints from the general public, which are held on a different dataset. This dataset includes information on the nature of allegation, the outcomes and decisions made, information on the subject of the allegation, key data about times, dates and jurisdictions. The review has taken an exploratory approach to this complex dataset, conducting descriptive statistical analysis on all components of the data to identify trends, changes and outliers. It should be noted that this data is significant but can never be fully accurate, as many variables depend on the recording practices of individuals which can vary between people and time. Nevertheless, the numbers are so significant that we are confident in our conclusions. The basis of our analysis is financial years April to March. We measured the number of allegations/cases which have been received in each financial year. Some other performance analysis measure instead the number of cases/allegations which have been finalised in a specific year. We have chosen the former approach for two reasons. Number one, it gives us a person-centred understanding of the misconduct system, i.e. the experience of those making the complaints and or being complained about. Number two, it allows us to look at the impact of changes to legislation which do not apply retrospectively, i.e. if a case was received in 2015, the rules changed in 2016 and the case was finalised in 2017. The 2016 rules will not apply. However, because we count all allegations in cases made in the time period, not just the finished ones, the closer we get to the contemporary day, the higher the percentage of allegations in cases which have not yet received an outcome becomes. Because of this, throughout we have included red lines to indicate where the unknown percentage is too large to draw conclusions for that year. The Regulation 13 data. The review also received a dataset on the 619 uses of Regulation 13 designed to remove unsuitable probationers from April 2018 till March 2022. This data included only information on the start and end of the Regulation 13 case and the business group and ethnicity of the subject and the outcome of the case. C. Workforce data. Data on the composition of the Met's workforce in terms of gender, ethnicity, years of service and overall volume over time have been used to provide a baseline figure for the analysis and proceeding of two data sets to understand how proportionate the use of conduct and Regulation 13 has been. Financial years are the basis of our analysis here also. Number two, quantitative engagement. The review has engaged extensively with officers and staff across the Met. Visits to basic command units, BCUs, and operational command units, OCUs, where the review team have held discussion groups with officers and staff across all ranks. Our ongoing listening events have taken place with staff support associations, trade unions, and police staff. The review team continues to engage with community and special interest groups. The review team have met with the Met's management board and senior leaders as a group on a one-to-one basis, and discussion groups have been held with leadership groups including chief inspectors, direct entry superintendents, DESs, sergeants and BTU commanders, the basic command unit commanders. Meetings may also take place with external stakeholders, including those from policing organisations, city halls, central and local government, amongst others. Number 3, literature and policy review. We conducted a literature and policy review of the police conduct and disciplinary systems, a review of the legal and regulatory framework and the Met's police policies on misconduct. So, number 1, part 1 of this analysis. So, the Met takes too long to resolve allegations of misconduct. From the day a Met police officer or staff member makes a misconduct allegation against another Met officer or staff member, or when an allegation of misconduct is made by the family of an officer or staff member, to the day a decision is made and a sanction is handed out, takes on average 400 days. Even removing these allegations involving the Independent Office for Police Conduct, the IOPC, allegations still take on average 350. That's stupid! That's actually stupid. It's gotten better, but, like, it's ridiculous. Not only that, but it seems that it was going down after the Tories took over. It hit rock bottom at around 2014, 2015, and then from then onwards it started to improve again. Had a drop off in 2018, 2019. But even now, 68% are still not being completed. It's ridiculous. There are several options for measuring the average time taken to finalise an allegation given in a given period. We have used the mean, which gives the precise central value of how many days each allegation took to finalise. However, as figure 2 shows, the distribution of days to finalise an allegation is very unequal, with around 20% of allegations taking around 90 days to resolve, and a small minority of allegations taking a great deal longer. Looking at the distribution of days taken to resolve all the allegations, we can see that while most allegations are solved within a year, 62%, hardly most, 62%? I mean, yes, that's on a majority side of things, but it's still quite poor. And around 20% take over 2 years to finalise. In some extreme cases, allegations can be open for years. That's ridiculous. After 2018-2019, the proportion of incomplete allegations, unresolved allegations, is too large to compare the averages. Fuck's sake. That's ridiculous. What? How you define the time period is also important. For instance, some Met performance data shows the average time to resolve misconduct issue to be lower than the review team's figure. This is because the Met performance analysis looks at all of the finalised cases in the time period and takes the average time to finalise those cases. However, there are many allegations and cases in the system which are ongoing which aren't included. Looking at figure 1, the average time taken to resolve a misconduct allegation, and you can search, you can check this. It's a PDF file, but you go and check that. Don't go and check it up. I will stop right here, or you can pause it. That's up to you. It's probably easier for you to pause it, and it's on the Met Police. So you just search the KC Review Met Police, and then it's the analytical report. However, there are many allegations and cases in the system which are ongoing which aren't including. Looking at Figure 1, the average time taken to resolve a misconduct allegation is in 2020-21 is 243 days, a vast improvement from previous years. However, this only reflects the average time taken for the 76% of allegations made in 2021 which are finalised. The remaining 24% are not finalised and do not appear in the Met's figures. So they're even cutting out figures. This is just not the people who did this, but the Met itself. Given that those allegations which are still outstanding up to 2 years later are the allegations which will take the longest to be finalised, the Met's performance data gives a skewed picture of how long the officers and staff who make complaints actually have to wait for allegations to be resolved. It's for this reason we only have included allegations from April 2013 till March 2019 in the above distribution analysis. If I can, I'll put it up, but I can't find the right program. If someone can give me some advice on what video editing program to use that I don't have to pay for, it'd be grand. But again, I can direct you to the PDF. We wanted to understand how long the people involved in these allegations actually need to wait for resolution, and therefore we have looked at those time periods where at least 90% of the allegations are finalised and therefore counted. This is a different approach from the performance data, which measures the efficiency of professional standards teams in closing cases. The Met take forever to deal with it. This is a quote. It absolute forever, whether it's right or wrong. They just keep people hanging on and on. How long can an investigation go on for? It's just wrong, totally wrong. PC in a certain BCU. Another one. We're not exiting people or bringing people back to work fast enough. As a superintendent. The length of misconduct investigations in the Met is a source of huge frustration for officers and staff. The delay impacts the individual making the allegation, the officer subject to the complaint, as well as operational effectiveness and the service to Londoners. On teams with officers who have their duties restricted whilst waiting for the outcome of a misconduct investigation, line managers report serious strains on team capacity and time, and that is a particular issue on basic command units, BCUs, which already feel stretched and under-resourced because of Tory cuts. And you will still get people who will try at their utmost to blame Labour. The IOPC takes jurisdiction in misconduct allegations which are particularly sensitive or serious, so typically these take long to resolve. Allegations which are under the jurisdiction of the IOPC only make up 10% of total misconduct allegations, but take around 3 times as long to finalise. Removing these allegations reduces the mean days to complete an allegation around 52 days and median days by 26 days. However, the allegations that are overseen by the Met are still taking on average nearly a year to resolve. It's ridiculous. It just... oh... hang on. Officers and staff. Number 2, officers and staff do not believe that action will be taken when concerns around conduct are raised. For each allegation of misconduct, a decision is made on whether or not there is a case to answer for misconduct or gross misconduct, and whether, therefore, any action should be taken. Consistently, 55 to 60% of the allegations by Met officers, staff, or their family received a no case to answer decision. What? Home Office data on police misconduct allegations finalised in the financial year ending March 2021 shows that the Met has a higher no case to answer rate than the national average. 57% versus 46% for England and Wales as a whole. At the most serious end of the process, where there is a serious answer for gross misconduct and a hearing takes place, resultant dismissals have been falling both in volume as a proportion of all outcomes as figure 5. Yeah, it just. After 2019 to 2020, the proportion of incomplete allegations is too large to compare the proportions of other outcomes. It's ridiculous. So, looking at what came before, oh my God. At the most serious end of the process, where there is misconduct, and here, where was I? This decline coincides with the 2016 introduction of legally qualified chairs, the LQCs, to head police misconduct hearings. However, caution is required, as this reduction may be due to the decisions made by staff in staff gross misconduct hearings or accelerated hearings where legally qualified chairs are not involved. We could not ascertain this data from the available review team, but we recommend this is looked at. Sus. Very sus. Legally qualified chairs were introduced in order to provide more independence than a misconduct hearing chaired by a chief constable. However, that a chief constable is not in charge of who can be dismissed from their force is a source of, or from their service, is a source of frustration amongst chief constables in the Met and beyond. That's ridiculous. So they don't even get to decide. They're the ones there. It's been an average falling. Again, after 2018-2019, the number of allegations which have not been assessed is too large to allow for meaningful analysis or comparison. This is particularly true for observing gross misconduct allegations, which typically take longer to finalise. And this is happening in the 2018-2019 year, where everything fell to shit just before Boris Johnson came in, and then after Boris Johnson came in, it carried on falling to shit. The problem is he's got the orange line on this graph. I know I can't show anything, but again, look, get the PDF and look at it yourself, right? And you will see that the orange line representing the allegations dismissed does go up after Boris Johnson comes in. However, the blue line, which represents all finalised allegations leading to dismissals, goes down. So what's hidden in that is that they're not taking on so many, so that they can show that they're getting a better figure. That's very Boris Johnson, which is heading towards the point I want to make. The experience that nothing happens when misconduct occurs dissuades officers and staff from reporting misconduct when they see it. In fact, when we heard that supervisors and managers are actively dissuading their staff from reporting misconduct, therefore institutionalising mistrust in the system and undermining the Met's ability to use misconduct system and set and uphold professional standards. And a point I would just like to add right the fuck now. If you're going to go and blame the Mayor of London, I would just like to say he gets apportioned money from the government, the Tory government, which he then has to apportion out. He's not been getting as much as Boris Johnson was getting. Sadiq Khan has not been, as a Labour, he's not been getting, and it's the same pattern across the country. Labour constituencies get less money than Tory constituencies. It's so petty, and look at the damage it's causing. Down to the police service. And all of this is under their watch. 2013 till now. The staff, the experience that nothing happens when... here's the one for you. I needed a quote. I needed to report wrongdoing for the first time in my career. Initially, the first supervisor said, "I don't want to know." Comment to an article made about... Oh, that was a comment to an article made about reporting on wrongdoing in the Met's intranet. That's ridiculous. And another one. When people report, the response is, "Are you willing to write a statement and put pen to paper?" Those supervisors say, "Do you want to do something about it? I'm not sure something will happen." People are being talked out of this. That's a chief inspector of a PCU. I can't tell you which one, but yeah, that's disgusting. That's actually I know this is really boring, but this is actually really disturbing when you think about the repercussions from this. And whilst it doesn't seem to be as bad across the country, there's evidence that it can be. And it's not exactly much better. I'm talking about England alone on that one. It's worth noting here that the misconduct system is not the grievance process, but about potential breaches of professional standards. This should be a matter for the Met management to pursue, but all too often we have heard from people who had reported wrongdoing that they received limited support and found the system stacked against them. As our chief inspector noted to us, we shouldn't put the onus on them, the complainant. We should say, "Thank you for telling us, I'll deal with this now." Instead, many officers and staff told us they are made to feel like they are the one with the problem, and when they raise a conduct issue, you know, slightly in comparison, it's kind of minor, but I have a similar experience when I was at South Devon College. And they can have a go at me for mentioning the name on here, I don't give a fuck. But when I was there, I got bullied, right? Now, I tried so long not to lose my shit, because I did in school. I lost my shit several times in school. And I wasn't the kind of person to run away when being bullied. I just didn't like doing that. Not on, unless there was literally no chance, I'd rather not run away. And it was the same in college. It followed me into college. Just because I refused to be the same as everyone else. It was ridiculous. I took it to the anti-bullying, because, posters up around colleges all over the country and schools. Anti-bullying this, go to the I went to the counsellor. Right, I go to the counsellor. I said, if you don't do anything, if you don't do something, I don't know what I'm going to do. Do you know what the result of all this was? I hadn't even kicked off at this point, right? But I, personally, was the one who got put on the Amber Behaviour Alert, despite the fact that I was the one being physically and verbally bullied. What was the point then? That's exactly how these people feel when making complaints about professionalism in the police force. These experiences reflect a deep mistrust of the misconduct system. Any initiatives which aim to encourage Met Police to report wrongdoing will continue to be undermined unless the system responds more effectively to those who have come forward. Exactly. A couple of quotes. An officer was convicted of an offence. After his conviction, a female officer came forward and said prior to his arrest, she had told multiple supervisors he had sexually assaulted her. Multiple. Reported to us by a BCU Chief Inspector. Another one. I'm afraid to say with bitter experience that the reporting of wrongdoing has been a harrowing and totally pointless exercise. Literally. What I was just saying. Comment to an article made about reporting wrongdoing on the Met's intranet. Professional standards staff told us that when cases go to a hearing, the misconduct process is like a full-blown court. It's literally as formal as court is. The victims are pulled across the racks. What? I don't like to be go down the line of conspiracy theories, but like it's almost like they have been. Whoever's doing this has been systematically. Whoever's right at the top of all of what's going on has been systematically dismantling our system, whether it's the NHS, the police system, the education service, our politics. I just. 3. Misconduct allegations relating to sexual misconduct and other discriminatory behaviour are less likely to result in a case-to-answer decision. Figure 6 shows the decision made for all finalised decision allegations against officers and staff between 2013. It's just cases to answer 5,185, 33%. Cases, no case to answer, 9,925, 62%. Discontinuance, 857, 5%. So just went, after a certain point, they just went, I can't be asked. There's no case to answer. I can't be asked to do it. It's more work. That's your job! The data shows that when allegations related to racism, sexual misconduct, or other discriminatory behaviour is made, it is less likely to receive an answer to decision than other issues. However, it is important to note that this is the area which the data quality is the least reliable, probably because people are so reluctant to come forward. There are several fields to detail the type and nature of the allegation, including a free text field. This means that our review has likely substantially undercounted the allegations linked to racism and sexual misconduct. At least it's in this report. Getting a more reliable picture from the data should be a consideration for the Met going forwards. Exactly. What would I do if I was Prime Minister? Like Thatcher, I would do societal reform, but not down her route, because this is stupid. Look where it's led us. Since April 2013, 15,967 allegations, 86% against officers and staff have been recorded as finalised. For all years combined, 33% of these allegations are given a case-to-answer decision for misconduct or gross misconduct. Only 33%. That's even worse than the. It's just. In the same time period, 563 allegations have been made against officers and staff. for breaching rules and equality around diversity. 363 of these, 64%, have been finalised. Although the numbers are much smaller, we can see in these allegations the case to answer proportion reduces to even 20%. Figure 8 shows the decision taken for all finalised allegations with race, faith or religion listed as a factor. Case to answer 200, 32%, no case to answer 402, 65%, discontinuance 21, 3%. That's ridiculous. Broadening the search since 2013, 753 allegations against officers and staff being made with race, religion or faith flagged as a factor. 623%, 83% of these have been finalised. These allegations have a 3-point higher chance of being given no case to answer decision. That's ridiculous. So what they're saying here is that more often than not, these decisions these allegations are just, there's no case to answer here. What are you on about? Grow up. Stop being so woke. Yeah, no shit. 835 allegations have been made in the period where sexual assault, harassment, or other sexual emotional misconduct is mentioned. Even more than the race, religion or faith. Way more. 522 of these, 63%, so it's even worse, have been finalised. The case for no answer percentage for these allegations is the same as the broader set of allegations, 62%. However, the case to answer percentage is notably lower, 29% compared to 33%. This leaves many officers and staff in the Met to conclude that discriminatory behaviour is in fact not a breach of professional standards and adds to the sense that anything goes. This is in an actual report. This leaves many officers and staff in the Met to conclude that that discriminatory behaviour is in fact not a breach of professional standards and adds to the sense that anything goes. Again, who does that remind you of? Again, I get that this has been going for longer than Boris Johnson, but it got worse when he took over. It actually got worse. The figures actually show that. The misconduct process, and I have a part of an explanation for that. Number 4, the misconduct process does not find and discipline officers with repeated or patterns of unacceptable behaviour. In this data, we analysed since 2013, 20%, 1,809 of the officers and staff with any misconduct case against them were involved in more than one misconduct case. Most of these individuals, 1,263, were involved in 2 separate misconduct cases in the time period or more. Over 500 officers and staff were involved in 3 to 5 different misconducts, and 41 officers were involved in 6 or more separate misconduct cases, ranging from 6 to 19. That's what? Only 0.71% of these 1,819 officers and staff with more than one misconduct case against them has been dismissed. Less than 1%. Do we have standards in our police force? Service? The review conducted a sample of officers and staff with more than 5 separate misconduct cases against them and found a small number of Met employees with significant and largely unchecked histories of misconduct. 3 of these are presented as anonymised case study anonymised case studies below. Evidence from the 2021 review of special case hearings by the London Police Ethics Panel shows that, this is little 2 by the word panel, shows that those who are dismissed have a higher number of previous conduct issues made against them, whether substantiated or not. Shows that those who are dismissed have a higher The key issues here is that each conduct issue is viewed separately, allegations are dealt with individually, and as far as we can see, connections are not made to prior concerns raised which fall short of formal misconduct. This crucially, this means repeated or escalating misconduct is not spotted. Missing those who potentially pose most risk to others. This is disgust. I'm running out of. Literally running out of words. A recent Met report with a little 3 beside it corroborates this finding, highlighting a blinkered approach to investigations which focuses too narrowly on the presenting issue. Exactly. It's the whole thing of this is an issue. But why is it an issue? Oh no, it's not, we don't care about why it's an issue. We just need to know that it is an issue. What? How fucking stupid? Again, standards. The report identifies 24 instances where the same officer had been investigated on 2 or more occasions for behaviour linked to sexual misconduct and domestic abuse. Oh. If you lasted this long, it's getting more and more tasty. If that's not the right words to use, but you know what I mean. Fuck. But found that these previous allegations had not been taken into account when considering if there was a case to answer for the allegations, for the alleged misconduct or its severity. So when some of these cases were actually investigated, the fact that these people had a record of sexual misconduct and / or domestic abuse was just not taken into account when considering if there was a case to answer. What? Again, under Tory management. Tory government. And it got worse after Johnson came in. A further barrier is that several lower conduct issues cannot be taken cumulatively to make a misconduct allegation. I've got this case and I've asked why I can't put incidents together because this officer has been racist or misogynist. They say no, it has to be done through separate misconduct meetings. Each one won't be quite enough, but if they took it all together it would. Chief Inspector. Why? Dip sample case study. 11 misconduct cases. Dip sample case study 1 involves an officer with 11 misconduct cases raised against him for his cases for cases involving abuse, sexual harassment and assault, fraud, improper disclosure of information and distribution of an explicit image of dick picking himself. What? The officer received a formal sanction in relation to the first misconduct case but was not dismissed. by the time this decision had been made, a further 6 misconduct cases had been raised against him. After receiving the formal sanction, a further 4 misconduct cases was raised against him, and the officer then received a further formal sanction, but still was not dismissed. This officer is still serving in the Metropolitan Police Service. I'm feeling numb. Okay, in small print underneath that, the first misconduct case raised against Officer 1 involved an allegation of harassment and assault, case 1. 4 months later, the officer has another more serious case of assault made against him, case 2. A month later, another third misconduct case was opened against the officer, case 3, and the details of the allegations are unknown. I don't like this. Really, it's an understatement though, I know, but I really don't like this. Less than 6 months later, a 4th misconduct case is opened against the same officer due to an allegation of sexual assault. Case 4. Another month passes and nearly a year since the first case was made against the officer. All 4 cases against the officer remain open, and a 5th case against Officer 1 is opened, this time involving a fraud. Case 5. A few months later, that was case 5. Case 5. The unknown misconduct case, case 3, and the case involving a fraud or deception, case 5, are given a no case to answer decision, and no action is taken. There is a culture of this. There actually is. 8 months after this, and now over a year later, the sexual assault case 4 is given a no case to answer decision, and no action is taken against the officer. Cases 1 and 2 remain open. I don't believe this. Yeah, you could say look at what was it? Devil's Advocate. There might have been good reason, but I'm sorry. 11 times? Fuck off. And I reckon if this looked sus, that all these allegations against him were sus, I reckon that would also be brought up. 2 months later, another allegation of assault is brought against the officer, case 6. Cases 1 and 2 involving harassment and assault remain open. A month after the most recent case of assault was received, the second case of assault, case 2, was given a no case to answer decision nearly 2 years later, and no action is taken against the officer. A month later, an allegation of improper disclosure of information is raised against the officer. That's case 7. Fuck. Over 2 years after the case was opened, the first case involving the harassment and assault was substantiated, but only one so far, case 1. A misconduct hearing issues him with a formal sanction, whilst cases 6 and 7 remain open 6 months after the final warning was issued. An 8th case against Officer 1 is opened involving several allegations. Case 8 involves several allegations, including allegations of sexual assault, sexual harassment, sex-based discriminations, abuse of power. My fucking gods. All allegations involve an incident that occurred whilst the officer was on duty. I'm sorry, but again, if you find this boring, I'm later that same year, the assault case opened. Oh, hang on, I jumped ahead a bit there, I think. Yeah, all allegations involve an incident that occurred whilst the officer was on duty. In the same month, whilst cases 6 to 8 are open, a 9th misconduct case against Officer 1 is initiated. Case 9. 2 allegations are raised, one of sexual assault again, and again, one of sexual harassment. What's the betting there going to be no case to answer on that one as on those as well? Later the same year, the assault case opened a year prior is given a no case to answer decision and no action is taken against the officer, whilst 3 misconduct cases are still open. 2 involving sexual violence. A 10th against the officer, against Officer 1 is initiated in a month later. This one involving harassment and the distribution of of sending a dick pic of himself. Four months later, the case involving improper disclosure of information, this was case 7 by the way if you've forgotten, raised 15 months previously, is given a no case to answer decision. In the same month, whilst 3 cases against Officer 1 involving harassment, sexual violence and the gender-based discrimination are still open, another allegation of sexual offence is raised against Officer 1. That's case 11. This incident has led to his arrest. A month after his arrest, the majority but not all of allegations of sexual assault and harassment in case 8 are found to have a case to answer. That's case 8. A misconduct hearing issues a further formal sanction but does not dismiss him. But he's been arrested. The fuck? In the same month, the case involving abuse, harassment and distribution of of dick picking himself, of a distribution of a dick pic of himself. That's not their words, they say explicit image, but you know what that means. Initiated 18 months prior is given a no case to answer decision and no action is taken. Case 10. A few months later and a year after it was opened, the case involving sexual assault and harassment, case 9, is given a no case answer decision. The officer is referred to reflective practice. Oh, it's a really, it's either laugh or cry, I swear. Dip sample case study 2, 6 misconduct cases. Dip's sample case study 2 involves an officer who has had 6 misconduct cases raised against him for oppressive conduct and harassment, neglect of duty and leakage of information and discriminatory behaviour linked to race and faith. So, what, your average Tory supporter? The majority of discrimination or harassment related allegations were linked to the officer's use of social media, including a WhatsApp group. Oh, what shock. I only use Facebook, and yes, Facebook has had a bad rep in of itself, but I only use Facebook and YouTube. I refuse to use Twitter, I refuse to use WhatsApp, I refuse to use all the others, because what's the point? They're all as bad as each other as far as I'm concerned in this case. Despite me being a non-absolutist. Anyway. The majority of discrimination or harassment related allegations linked to the officer's use of social media in a WhatsApp group. The officer has received 2 final written warnings in 10 years and received a no case to answer decision for 3 of the cases, and 1 case remains open. The officer is serving in the Metropolitan Police Service. Just like the other asshole. Here we go. 10 years ago, Officer 2 receives his first misconduct allegation linked to an inappropriate social media posts. Case 1. The case was unsubstantiated 5 months later. No case to answer in the new legislation. Right. Who passes legislation? Parliament. And who's running? Is supposedly in charge of Parliament at the moment? Government. Who's in government? Tories. New legislation. That comes under Boris's legislation. I'm going to do this case and the next case, and then I'm going to make my case, and then I'm going to end, because otherwise I'm going to hurt myself. 3 years later, Officer 2 received his second misconduct allegation, this time for oppressive misconduct or harassment while off duty. Case 2. The following month, the allegations were unsubstantiated and no action was taken. Again. Does anyone see a pattern here? Anyone? 5 months later, the third misconduct was raised against the officer, case 3, this time for neglect of duty and leakage of information. A year and a half later, a gross misconduct hearing issued final warning for the officer. Nearly 2 years later, a 4th misconduct case was raised, and that the second allegation of oppressive conduct or harassment linked to the officer's social media post was raised. Case 4. 6 months later, a no case to answer decision is made and no action is taken again. And I said again, not the report. 4 months later, a misconduct case is raised against Officer 2 involving 5 allegations of discriminatory behaviour related to race and religion as it linked to a WhatsApp group the officer was in. Case 5. 15 months later, a misconduct meeting for Case 5 led to another final written warning for the officer. Before this decision, a further allegation, Case 6 against the officer, was raised and remains open, and this officer is still serving. One last case. Dip sample case study 3. And this one's got 7 misconduct cases. Dip sample case study 3 involves an officer who has 7 misconduct cases raised against him for corrupt practice, traffic irregularity, failure to safeguard whilst on duty, domestic assault, sexual assault, domestic abuse, disrespectful attitude, and discreditable conduct. The officer has received management action 3 times, reflective practice once, and has received no case to answer decisions in 3 other cases. The officer is still serving in the Metropolitan Police Service. Again, do we have no standards? Like, seriously, do we have none? The first case against Officer 3 involved an allegation of corrupt practice. Case 1. 2 months later, another misconduct case was opened against Officer 3, this time for traffic irregularity. Case 2. Only 2 months after it was opened, the case was substantiated and finalised, and the officer received a management action. Fuck knows what that means. If someone can explain to me what that means, please let me know in the comment section below. Down there. A month later, and around 6 months, 6 case one was initiated. The corruption allegation against the case 1 against Officer 3 was finalised. Though the allegation was unsubstantiated, the officer received more management action. Again, what's that mean? And what does that do? What effect does that have? Later that year, Officer 3 has had a third... Officer evidently none. Officer 3 has had a third misconduct case open, this time involving an allegation related to failure to safeguard whilst off duty. He was found to have engaged in misconduct. Case 3. He was found to have engaged in misconduct, and management advice was provided when the case was finalised a year later. How is any of this good enough? This misconduct case lasted a year and a half, after which a misconduct meeting found there was no proof to suggest the case was misconduct. No action was taken. What was the point? 7 months later, an allegation of sexual assault and domestic abuse was raised against Officer 3, Case 5. The allegation was given a no case to answer decision after 6 months of investigation and no action was taken. 3 months after this decision, an allegation related to disrespectful attitude and discreditable conduct was brought against Officer 3, Case 6. Whilst the case of discreditable conduct was still ongoing, another allegation of unprofessional and disrespectful attitude was raised against the officer, with a second allegation of failure of duty, Case 7. It was decided there was no case to answer again in the case of the first case of disrespectful attitude / discreditable conduct, but the officer was referred to reflective practice when the case was finalised over a year later, Case 6. The second case of discreditable conduct and failure of duty received no case to answer decision again, and shortly after, and no action was taken. That was Case 7. Like, right. Tomorrow, I am going to do a second part to this, because I cannot believe what I'm reading, and right now I'm going to cause myself damage. I cannot believe what I have read so far, and there is more to come. PCUs are like the dumping ground for staff. PSUs are like the dumping ground for staff. It's not a place where people aspire to end up. Isn't that just lovely? This is just the London Met Police Office. I wonder what it's like around the rest of the country. Again, I'm going to carry on with this in a second video. Let me know what you think so far. I'm going to say now, I blame Boris Johnson, and I have a specific reason to do so. If you, again, download the PDF, look at this, look at the graphs, look at the data that the review managed to get hold of, right? And even that shows that after Boris Johnson turned up, standards got even worse. And that, I suspect, and I allege, that is due to his drive for 20,000 new police officers. So the standard, and I'm waiting to get to the point where it gets to recruiting of new police officers, because that's even worse. But again, I know a fair bit of this cannot be blamed on Boris Johnson, but it can be blamed on the Tories. You know, their lack of funding, their lack of resources, the lack of resources going into the Met. It's ridiculous. So, blessed to say, everyone. It's been some Dork Specky. This has been some dork stuff. I hope everyone's alright. Yeah, I like, subscribe, comment. I know, again, this is a long one and it's a bit tedious, but oh my god, the details in this are fucked up. And Boris Johnson can be blamed, at least in part. Blessed Thursday, everyone. Again, this has been... It's been. Have a good evening, everyone. Go Kveld.